Welcome to All Things Chiropractic.
Welcome to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
I'm Dr. Mark Davini. Welcome.
And we have a special guest today, near and dear to my heart.
Even more special, right?
Oh, yeah. Dr. Daniel Reida, hello and welcome.
Thank you for having me on board, and I've enjoyed watching some of your podcasts, and nice to be on one now.
Yeah. So as we get into the episode, you'll get to why he's so near and dear to my heart, but we always ask our guests, the first thing is like, what is your chiropractic story, Dr. Dan? How did you get into chiropractic?
Well, I was born a very sickly child, and my mom was a nurse, so we did all of the medical things. I was hospitalized a few times. I was carried a lot, apparently, because I cried a lot. And when I was about 5 years old, somebody got my folks to bring me to a chiropractor. And at the time, we lived in Massachusetts, and chiropractic wasn't legal. And so we had to drive to New Hampshire. And we drove to Derry, New Hampshire, where the Bayin Clinic was, which is 4 or 5 brothers. And it was an upper cervical practice. So Dr. Bayin started adjusting my atlas, and within 2 or 3 months, all my health problems cleared up. My whole family started going there. My dad would put Mom and all 4 of us kids in the station wagon on Friday nights, and we'd drive to New Hampshire and all get work done. We'd all be in the same room, getting adjusted at in the same group. And the place was so busy that when you'd arrive, you'd go in and take a number and go out into the parking lot, and they'd call over a loudspeaker like a clam shack on Cape Cod. And in we go. And so by 3rd grade, I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor. And my dad got so inspired. He had been damaged in World War II. He was a bomber pilot and crashed 3 times and had a lot of back problems. And so when I was 3rd grade, he quit his job at Foster Grant Plastics, and we moved out to Davenport, Iowa, and this was the days of B.J. Palmer. And so I got to be there during that time frame, and we lived in a tenement project called Palmerton, which had been World War II barracks that B.J. was smart enough to have bought and put 60 Palmer families in there. So we had all kinds of friends to play with, and there began my interest in chiropractic.
It's interesting too, right? Some of the younger doctors, they may not even recognize, but you're talking about being treated through toggle recoil, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you set up a cervical, and for those young docs, if you don't know what toggle is, look up some of the old YouTubes with BGA doing a toggle.
And it wasn't light and fluffy with Dr.
How did people survive?
Right.
Yeah, it was not light and fluffy at all, but it worked, right?
It worked, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of those spring-loaded tables?
No, no, this is a stationary table. You just climb on, and just the headpiece drops out.
Was
the
chiropractor...
Clay Thompson that was the one that told him to add the headpiece. Even prior to that, they used to do toggle without a drop piece.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, some of the videos are amazing.
Amazing.
Was the chiropractor up in New Hampshire a box on the wall kind of guy?
A box on the wall, it's called GPC, and you'd put in whatever you thought you could afford, and there was no set fee. And when my dad practiced, he did the same thing. And some people would put in green stamps, but some people would put in $1 or $2. But it was, pay as you could afford.
Was there
like
any
insurance
document
today now, right? Whatever they want to pay, they just pay.
Yeah. The insurance has copied the same concept.
Was there any documentation back then?
I know in my dad's office, it would say Dan Reida sick, or Dan Reida stomach ache, or Dan Reida. It was definitely no documentation that we're familiar with.
But he also put a listing down, right?
Well, my dad just did right atlases. The table was up against the wall, so you could only get on it one way, and you could only get a right atlas.
So what
He
you're
wasn't
trying
a
to say is
mixer.
there was no wrong atlas, right?
Yeah.
No. Only the right
Ironically,
atlas.
everybody needed the right atlas only.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I adjusted the right one only, never the wrong one.
Yeah. Yeah. So for our listeners out there, the reason why I said near to dear to my heart is Dr. Dan Reida was the one who brought me into chiropractic, employed me way back in 1997, glassy-eyed 24-year-old that didn't have any experience or barely even knew what chiropractic was, but had a buddy who was a patient of his and went to chiropractic school, one of the many people that were inspired by him to go to chiropractic school, and gave me a shot. I think I remember in the interview that you said, "I don't think I've ever hired a guy before for this role."
No, I was looking for a guy to try to neutralize out some of the female energy in the office at the time because we had, I think, probably 4 female CAs that some of them were getting a little spicy with one another. But the patient I had that recommended Paul said that Paul is a people person and a problem solver. And man, is that the truth in all the ways, shapes, and form.
Glad to see I lived up to my reputation even back then.
So I guess arguably we could say that you're at fault for Paul.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a
we-
lot of
Take it any
people
way-
in this
take
state
it
that
any
would
way you
really
want.
like
Yeah.
to
Take
get
it
at
any way you
you.
want.
Yeah, it's been decades now of good times.
That's for sure.
So, throughout the many years that you've practiced, Dr. Rita, how many of those years have you had associates?
I started out my second year in practice. I got an associate, and back then it was such huge thing to do, but I knew I needed one because I was already that busy. And it was a young man that was a great looking guy, so much so that he had been a model, but he spent a great deal of time in front of the mirror in the office and and uh, and was single and a wonderful guy. But by the end of the first year, I knew that I couldn't renew his contract, and I had
I
such
never held that against you, Dan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
and so that was the first one. But I've probably had 15 plus associates since, and some of the young docs coming out of school would almost have the opinion that he or she would swing by the BMW dealer on the way to the office and perhaps choose their first car because it was going to be so easy. And that wasn't always the case. And I half jokingly said there was, in my early years particularly, that there was 3 stages of associateship. And the first stage is, Dan, it's an honor and a privilege to be here to work with somebody like you. Phase 2 is, Dan, I need a little bit more money. And phase 3 is, Dan, I made this practice what it is today and I'm out of here. Bye. And so there was some early struggles with associates. And also back then, I would write contracts that had, you couldn't open, if you left the office, the first contract I wrote, you couldn't open within 50 miles of the office, a non-compete of 50 miles.
Can't be in the same state. Yeah.
Right, pretty much. And over the years, long ago, I stopped writing any contracts that if somebody wants to go down the street and open up, then, I'd prefer they didn't, but some had. And
And I can say that when I came into the state and in a sense, your reputation had preceded you. And you were, as I understood it back then, you would start early in the morning and go to midday. And then from the midday on, you had your associate go to the early evening and pretty much generated one of the largest practices in the state, as I understood it.
yeah, that is about summarizes it pretty well. And in fact, for probably the first 15 years, I started at 5 in the morning. In my old age now, I get here at 5:15 and I start at 5:30. But I'd work 5 to noon, and then I'd have an associate work noon to 7. So we're open 14 hours a day. And the good thing about that is you can run 2 complete shifts without having to expand your space. And so you'd have two sets of staff to run it, but you could run 2 7-hour shifts and use the same equipment, and it worked really well. The good thing about the early hours is there's an entire early morning world out there that if people haven't ever done it, they don't know it. But
Tell me about it. I have no clue.
He does not.
one of the practice docs that kind of teaches seminars refers to those hours as the golden hours, because I'll have many mornings by 9 a.m. I've seen as many patients as another doc might see all day. And last Monday, I think I had 7 patients by 6:25 in the morning, and that's a good way to start your day.
I used to
And
open for Dr. Reida, and we used to play a game. How many people can we see before he actually starts his scheduled hours in the morning?
yeah, I'll have patients waiting for me in the parking lot at 5:10 in the morning, and go on in. One
But
of
you were a
my
Gonstead practitioner too, so this was not an easy. It
yeah,
wasn't an in and out. It was work.
yep, physical work. And I had a chiropractor friend that put a sign on his mirror in his bathroom that said, "Quit whining, Dan's already at work." And
Boy, is that true.
Exactly.
So,
But
with
you know
all
what
the
it is? It's a
associate
testament to how hard work is part of what makes success in this business.
yeah, that for sure. And what we do is physical. A lot of docs have retired because they physically worn out, and I'm blessed that I'm still going, and hope to still keep going.
with all the associates you've had over the years, what advice would you give a doc who either is trying to dip his toes or it just feels like he or she has not had a lot of success with associates?
The best associates I've had that have done the most success and stayed with me for at least 10 years are doctors that had previously practiced on their own, and they knew the hassle, the hardship, the financial of running their own practice, and they were grateful to come in to an established practice and not have to do any of the management part of it or worry about the financial part of it. And so if you can find a doc that's already experienced, and the toughest docs I've had associate wise are the newbies out of school that truly don't know anything. And if you do hire a new doc, particularly, you want him or her to shadow you for at least a month in your office so they see everything that you do and how you interact with your patients, how you do your exams, how you do your x-rays, how you do report of findings, and have them try to model as much as they can over the process, not necessarily the same words, but the process. But the newbies, you have to be able to give a new doctor at least 3 or 4 new patients a week, because they're going to take them in, going to blow them out the door, and they're not going to generate their own patients for quite a while. Once you get a doc, an associate that can generate their own new patients, you're golden.
Marry
But
them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
keep them in
So,
the mix.
this question is really two-parter because one of it's kind of obvious, but you've been around a while, Doc. So, what are the significant sort of changes you've seen in the profession over the years? And I'm gonna sort of half answer that by saying you mentioned X-rays. I know you have X-rays and always had in your office. What's your opinion of doctors that aren't taking X-rays or at least don't get them from outside sources?
At school, where a key core part of our training is to take x-rays, read x-rays, and to treat from x-rays. And literally from my very first office down here that was 480 square feet, I had an x-ray room, a dark room, a waiting room, an adjusting room, and I've always had x-rays from day one. And it's doable. It is expensive nowadays to get digital x-ray, but there's tons of used equipment. I certainly started with used equipment, but x-rays are my roadmap of what I will do or not do with that patient. and x-rays will tell you, oh my goodness, don't go here, or absolutely go here. And so we're trained in it, and unfortunately the docs that don't do it get out, they get out of the habit of doing it, and they don't even order them very often from hospitals or other settings. But I sure would recommend x-rays because that's how we're trained to tell you what to do and what not to do with your patient.
What other changes maybe have you seen in the profession or with doctors over the years?
Changes, in the early years, one, because my first year down here was 1972, um, there was only 2 other chiropractors on Cape Cod. Now I think there's 85 on Cape Cod. And so this wasn't a desirable area because it was quiet back then. But, fees obviously have changed. My fees at the time were $7 a visit, $15 for x-rays, and $12 for an exam. And fees have changed. Unfortunately, 1975, we did get Medicare coverage, but Medicare has never paid for exam or x-rays, even though you have to do them. And Medicare certainly hasn't kept up with their fees. In turn, insurance fees back in the 1980s were positively better than nowadays. And then as the insurance industry figured out what insurance codes were popular and we used, they pretty much took them away or cut things down. So economically, it's not as easy now to develop a strong practice, and it was much easier in the 80s and 90s. And in the 70s, I didn't even care about insurance because most people paid cash, and you didn't have to even, have insurance as an option.
And so, where do you think the profession is going in the next decade?
Well, I'd like to think that it would be stronger, better. Years ago, a lot of chiropractors, in the tank process would say that we should be practicing in groups, that if you had chiropractic groups, you could have all of the x-ray equipment and the extra equipment that is fun to have in a practice. But all these years, chiropractors have run solo practices. It's even still, it's unusual to have an associate, let alone 3 or 4 or 5 associates. And so I don't see anything changing likely in the next 10 years because chiros tend to be soloists, and unfortunately they end up having to run a small office most of the time because they can't afford to have a bigger office. So I'd like to see more chiropractors working together and have good, strong groups.
We have that maverick mentality.
Yeah.
So back in the Mercedes 80s, as some people called it, right? The good old
Yeah.
days. What and money was flowing. I know you did some fun things with some of your money.
Yeah. Well, yes, I did have a few fun things. One of the unfun things was I got divorced in 1983, which was a 7-figure divorce.
Yeah.
And Massachusetts is a community property state where she got the property and I left the community. And but even still, at the time, I was single for 16 years after divorce, and I had Porsche convertibles, Mercedes, Suburbans, had a ski house up north, had a beach house on the Cape, and my regular house, and all of the fun things that were easy to
Okay.
have.
Is it true you had a racehorse investment?
My friend, colleague, Dr. Richard Singleton, and I fancied ourselves as investors, and he said that he'd owe me one, but I'd have to get in on the 7-horse limited partnership. And the prospectus for a racehorse is people that invest in racehorses lose 95% of their money. and which
Wow.
wasn't a good,
There
but
you go.
we lost 100% of our money. And
Where do I sign up for that one?
but we did go to the Kentucky Derby a bunch as fans, not as owners.
That's great.
So, if there was any advice you give like a chiropractic college out there about, you know, preparing a doctor, is there anything you'd want to, you know, see them focus more on, or something that you think they're doing great with, or both?
Yeah, unfortunately, the colleges do very, very little on preparing a doctor on how to open a practice and how to run a practice and how to manage a practice. And, they do a good job on teaching a doc how to be a chiropractor, but the colleges have been woefully short on training docs how to actually run a practice. And, I understand that colleges are academic and they have to get the doc prepared for how to be a doctor, but being a doctor and being successful in practice are way different. And that's why some of the practice management companies like you guys and others have been successful. That when I first started, I went to a Parker seminar in Dallas, Texas, when Dr. Jim Parker was the man, and just got blown away by what I didn't know. And within 2 or 3 hours of sitting in his seminar, I'm going, oh my God, now I know what to do. And 3 or 4 days later, I flew home and I moved out from where I was with my dad's old practice and moved to the Cape and was tremendously successful. But I actually applied the things they told me to do. I didn't just attend and wish that it would be better. I actually did the work, but the schools could do a much better job on providing teaching of how to actually be in the real world.
One of the things that we've learned with our interactions with colleges is that now with accreditation and other sort of requirements and handcuffs, it's harder for them to be able to teach a doc how to generate business, because even in their clinics now, they can't even require them to go out and market their own, right? Because that somehow is a violation, or could be a violation of their accreditation. It's crazy to me that the requirements that my buddy when he went to school had to do, and certainly when you went to school, and even Mark when he went to school way back then, like those
I was
requirements.
waiting. I was going to say you showed respect to Dr. Reida, and not once had made a comment about time and age, and boom, there I am.
I'll wait for the good stuff till the end, but they can't even tell me, Mark, what I'm remembering, right? Like you can't require him to do certain things that used to be just basic stuff in clinic.
Yeah, well, Dan and I would remember back in the day, they had so many visits, we had to have so many exams, so many X-rays. They don't function that way anymore. It's
Really?
Yeah.
oh, it's you could
Wow.
literally leave chiropractic school with very little experience in adjusting.
Well, that would be a terrible thing if that's how it goes.
Yeah, and for
You
that
know,
privilege, they charge you 5 times more than you and I paid, even
well,
accounting for inflation.
when I started at Palmer, there was 12 quarters. The tuition was $240 per quarter. By the time I left, it was up to $300 per quarter, and we were outraged that it was
Mhm.
so expensive. So my whole chiropractic education was like $3,000, and now it's
Yeah.
probably $200,000.
Yeah, well, if you only fast forward 10 years later, which is when I graduated, is the difference from you, total, the chiropractic education was 15
Yeah,
total, and there was some living expenses built into that 15.
but I think something that colleges could do, even though they can't do it within their confines of their campus, if they could set up some kind of I'm going to say like a Parker type seminar, but set up some kind of an off-site thing that every practice management company could come and do a class or two. So you're not singling out one group,
Hmm.
but you could have a consortium of practice management people that could present their ideas, and the students could attend or not attend, but clearly smart
If
ones would
nothing else,
attend.
just encourage it more than discourage it.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I think that alumni associations could probably engage in that a lot easier and be able to do some of those things when it comes to that kind of, because today the pressures I think are, you're talking about, the cost relative to today was so little, but the pressures of a young doc coming out of school with six figures in debt, and especially in this area of the country, the affordability is just not there for housing and financial, paying off your student loans or even paying your student loans.
Yep, fully agree.
Yeah, if we were to take our student loan amount, my student loan amount, that $15,000, add $5,000 for it, which was what the payback was over 10 years, but calculate the inflation rate from 1981 when I graduated till today, chiropractic education today should cost $62,000.
Not until there were student loans did the tuition skyrocket. Back when I went there was no student loans, and so all of the costs stayed down. And, once there were loans out there, then people were just jumping up the tuition.
Well, and frankly, the insurance reliance is so heavy and reimbursement is so awful in most categories, if not all, 99% of the financial categories, that there's no shock there. I mean, it's ridiculous, it's difficult. It's challenging, as it were. So anyway, wow, I think we've gotten through a lot.
About 45 years, right?
Yeah.
54 years.
Oh, I'm sorry, 54 years. 45 for me.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. It's rare that we have someone who's a little bit older than Dr. Mark here on the podcast. So he's really loving it.
Excellent. Well, it's certainly been a fun ride, and I have no intention of stopping. And my wife said I'm going to fall over dead on my last patient.
Yeah.
And
that's great for everyone but that last patient.
Exactly.
But you won't be around to who cares, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
that's right.
Well, thanks again, Dr. Daniel Reida.
Thank you.
Definitely, and I personally appreciate you very much taking your time, being an awesome mentor and friend over all these years. Thank you so much for being a part of our podcast.
Love you.
Excellent. Well, we'll all grow old together.
Yeah, we go. That's right. Some of us are already more there than others, right, Mark?
I won't say that Paul had a birthday the other day, and I won't say how much it was, but he's no longer in the young category anymore.
How dare you? Well, thanks again for listening to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
Mark Davini, thank you.
Along with Dr. Reida. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to All Things Chiropractic. We'd love to hear from you. Visit allthingschiropractic.com with comments, episode ideas, or questions. Or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at All Things Chiropractic Podcast. Be sure to join Dr. Mark Davini and Paul Andrews next time for another episode of All Things Chiropractic.